What's going on, everybody? It's me, Ryan, here for another episode of the Classic Buffalo Podcast, where we let your story be heard. We interview everyday people's stories on their experience with mental health, what they've gone through, what they're passionate about, and we just shoot the breeze. So today is episode 44. We interview someone who goes by the name Hivvy. Her real name's Emily. Super sweet girl. We get to learn about her crazy journey into becoming a teacher, how she accidentally became one, and then her chance encounter with a very serious situation and being a widow at a very young age, and how she's taken that experience through grief and channeled it to support other people. And it's a wild, crazy, wacky adventure. That's life, right? But this is another really good episode. So without further ado, let's get to know Hivvy. Joining me on this wonderful Friday night is the one, the only, Hivvy. What's up, girl?
Hey.
Thanks so much for joining me. You actually brought some cookies today.
I did.
These are absolutely wonderful. I'm not just saying that because you're here. But vegan too, right?
They are.
Gosh, I didn't think vegan food could be so good, to be totally honest.
I didn't either. Because I'm not vegan. No, but they're pretty delicious.
Man, what percentage did you have in making the cookies? I
don't know. 10% seems like I'm exaggerating. In helping to make them?
Yeah. Was it 50-50?
Yeah. Oh, no. I'm going to say like 5.
Oh, man.
I was there for moral support.
Okay, well, 5% still works.
I stirred some things.
There you go. You can't get a good cookie without a good stir, but you're not a chef. You're actually a teacher.
I am.
By trade. What made you get into teaching?
This is great. I am an accidental teacher.
Ooh, okay.
This is not my plan in life. I fell into it. I was a face painter at the zoo.
Okay, I can see that.
And
that was my first guess.
Yeah, and so honestly, backing up a little bit, originally in college, I thought I wanted to be a teacher.
Okay.
And went to school for like a year and decided this is not the route for me, and I never want to teach in my entire life. And so then I switched to art school and got a degree, a fine arts degree in art with a focus in photography.
Okay.
And in the meantime, I was working at the zoo as a face painter, and I got a call at the end of the summer from a friend, and he said, "Hey, have you ever considered teaching art before?" To which I said, "No, I haven't considered teaching art before." And
did you just go off on him? Like, how dare you?
I didn't go off on him, but I just kind of chuckled, like, "No, what are you talking about?"
Yeah.
So he was the assistant principal at a local school on like the northeast side.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Okay, well, will you consider teaching art? Because we really need an art teacher." And I was like, I don't know about this. He said, "Well, you just come in and meet the principal."
Yeah.
And I said, "Is this an interview?" And he said, "No, it's not an interview. Just come and meet her." I said, "All right, deal. I'll come and meet her."
He hustled you so hard.
Oh my God. I came in my zoo uniform, and it's like bright orange and khakis because I had to go to work after.
Oh.
And I sat down, and she starts asking me questions about my background and this and that. And maybe 10 or 15 minutes go by, and she's like, "Well, I love you. You're hired." And I said, "What?" And she was like, "Yeah, if you want it, you're hired." And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And she goes, "Well, do you want to see your classroom?" And I said,
"Wow.
Yeah, I guess that is something that I want to do."
Yeah.
So they went and showed me my classroom, and she was like, "All right, well, you start on Tuesday." And it was a Thursday. So I went home and immediately got on my computer and Googled how to be a teacher to try to figure out what this life I just decided to do was. And then I fell in love with it. So then I started, and I fell in love with it, and now I cannot fully envision doing anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was your first day?
The first day...
Were you nervous, being in front of kids?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, the kids... I was nervous about the job. The kids didn't make me so nervous.
Yeah.
The first day was really all about learning their names and telling them who I was. And
is it really as difficult as the teachers say it is to remember all the names of the kids? Because I remember, like, as a kid, the teachers would always joke, like, I'm so sorry, give me another week. It's going to be so hard to remember all your names. And you're like, it can't be that hard.
When you come into a new building, yes. If you've been there and you're getting a new class.
How many kids did you have, like, total? Do you remember?
I think at that school, so I'm at a different school than I was initially. Right. That first school, maybe between 250 and 300. So it's an elementary school. So I taught all the grades because I was the specials teacher.
Wow.
So, I mean, yeah, I was learning.
Okay, that's hard.
Yeah, like over 250 kids' names. And the easiest way to go about that was just doing assigned seats so that they would stop moving when I saw them.
Right.
And I was actually part-time at that school, so I was only there Tuesdays and Thursdays, which gave me less time to see them, and my schedule was so packed, like, so I wasn't really interacting with them outside of that room. So I'd see them 40 minutes and send them on their way and then have to wait a whole nother week before I saw them again.
Yeah.
So it did take some time. I guess, yeah, it was chaotic at first. And after the first day, I quickly realized the only thing I need to learn how to do from here on out is classroom management. So it did not matter what I taught them as long as I learned how to control the environment in the room.
Yeah.
And once I found a way to do that, then I was golden.
Dang. What's like one of your like favorite like moments of being a teacher?
So in that first year of teaching, eventually I stopped working at the zoo. Well, it was off season for me at the zoo. And so I started picking up subbing jobs at that same school, but I was subbing on Monday, Wednesday, Friday since I taught Tuesday, Thursday.
Right.
Which helped me get to know the kids better, and I enjoyed that. And because I was subbing at one point, they had put me on like a middle school lunch duty, and I was like, what does this entail? I have no idea what to expect in a middle school lunch duty. And one of my coworkers prepped me, and they said, but today their fruit is clementines or like cuties.
Yeah.
And to middle schoolers, they see that as they each get handed an individual ball, like to play with. So they're going to be trying to throw them at each other across the room, all this madness. And I was like, all right. And there was an 8th grader that was just sitting, tossing it up to himself, like tossing it in the air and catching it and tossing it in the air and catching it. And I'm just kind of walking around, making my rounds. And I see him doing this from across the way. So I kind of loop around so that I am behind him where he can't see me anymore. And he went to toss it up. And while it's in the air, I snagged it out of the air. God. And all of his friends could see that I was right behind him. And I really thought I was just going to miss and like kind of slap it across the room. But I didn't. I caught it. And it was so smooth. And all the boys were like, oh, the teacher got you. Like praising me. And I was like, yeah, I did it. So that was one of my praise moments as a teacher. That's probably not like an inspirational one at all.
That's okay. That's actually awesome though.
I'm very proud of that.
You're an athlete though, right?
Athlete seems strong, but I did play sports all growing up, and I still enjoy participating in
cornhole.
Yeah, participating in sports.
Do you know they call cornhole bags in places in the country? They call it just bags.
I want to say no, but you are like igniting this memory that I forgot that I had, that I think maybe I've heard that once before, but kind of dismissed it because that's not what it's called.
It's a repressed memory, I think.
Yeah, that's what it feels like.
Gosh.
Yeah, that's not what it's called.
Heard it. Yeah, I heard. Yeah, it was one of those like, it was like someone was saying soda, pop, Coke. Like, what is it called? And they're like, is it bags or cornhole? It's like, who in the world called it bags? Yeah. I didn't know that was a thing. But, growing up in Indiana, I guess it's, we have our, do you call it soda or pop?
This is so funny. My friends and I were having this conversation 2 days ago, but I go with soda. And most people in Indiana don't.
Yeah. I mean, it was like, I was born and raised. It's like, if I was 12 years old when I left Florida, is that born in Florida and then 13 to now raised in Indiana? Is that right, you think? So I was born in Florida, raised in Indiana? Because that's what I'm trying to explain, like, how, because, like, I don't have a Southern accent, which Florida people really don't anyway, but, like,
Yeah.
is that when you establish an accent? Yes, maybe. Like, I still say
Yeah.
y'all. I still say y'all all the time.
I guess I just would say, like, oh, I was raised until age whatever, and then I moved, but I've spent most of my life here. Right. But I have found that most people I know that were born in another state and moved to Indiana, like, around 12, like, around that kind of preteen age.
Right.
They never want to say that they're from Indiana. Even if they've lived here for more of their life, they never want to claim it. They always want to claim the first state.
I just realized that. I've now lived in Indiana longer than I was in Florida.
Well, yeah.
Wow.
Do you claim it?
I guess I'm going to have to. It's my state. I know. But so that's like 2020. Like now we're in a new, like, decade. Not only, like, because every year for the last 9 years, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's been like, oh, it's just a new year. And, like, you can kind of play it off as it's just another day. But, like, now we've done it 10 times. Mm-hmm. So it's like another decade. And for me, being 26, it's sort of like the first time that happened, I was like, I don't know, like, so now it's from 16 to 26. And then the first time it would have been from like 6 to 16. So like my concept of like a decade of time would have been 10. And then like now that I'm 20, I don't know, it's this weird, like, now this is, I feel like, is the first time I'm actually able to contemplate or like realize how long 10 years is, but then also how quick it went by.
Right.
Like, for you, who's a little slightly older than me, like, do you feel that exact same way? Like, what is your concept of time?
Over the past 10 years, obviously, social media has kind of taken off in, you know, ways that it wasn't 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so I did notice how typically when people are doing the whole New Year thing or coming to the end of a year thing, they sum up that year and then they sum up what they want for the next year. And there was so much more visibility of seeing people summing up what this past decade was and what they would want for the next decade, which I thought was really interesting. And then, you know, when you're trying to reflect, am I reflecting on this year? Am I reflecting on the past decade? Because that's so much time.
Right.
When the last decade came along, I wasn't thinking about it in terms of, I'm entering a new decade, or none of that was even entering my mind. I don't think people were as like excited. I guess now I think people are excited because it's roaring 20s again. Mm-hmm. I saw a lot of New Year's Eve parties playing that up.
Right.
I don't know. I take time in the moment, I guess, because of everything I've been through in my life. I've never been the person to have a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan. I'm very much more living in the moment. I reflect on the past a lot, but I'm not stuck there.
Yeah. Do you have like a resolution for this year?
I don't make flat out resolutions, but I would like to finish writing a book this year and get it published.
I've talked with so many people our age that want to make books.
Yeah?
I think that's becoming like a popular thing to do. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm just something I've noticed that people... First of all, tell me why you want to write one and finish it. And B, why do you think that's becoming a popular thing?
I want to write one because in the past 5 years, have gotten really into writing. I was never a reader growing up, or I wouldn't even consider myself a writer growing up. I mean, I do, the journaling from time to time, but it wasn't my passion. And in the past 5 years, it really has become a passion. And then more specifically, in the past couple of years, I've gotten really into poetry and have been able to find people that relate to my poetry, and it has healed me in a lot of ways that I didn't even know were possible. So I would really like to kind of memorialize that by putting that all together in a book. As far as poetry goes with popularity, there's Rupi Kaur out there now, and there's a lot of people making poetry cool again, I guess. And that's kind of was my thoughts of it. My best friend had told me to start looking at all these poets that she followed. And I was like, poetry is a thing? Like, what do you mean you want me to go look at poets? And then as I was reading it and relating, I was learning a lot through it. I liked that there weren't rules, the same types of rules that more official writing would be. You can kind of bend them all. You don't have to have punctuations all of a sudden, and you don't have to capitalize things all of a sudden. And I liked all that because those were things that I was fighting with, trying to write, I don't know, a blog entry or something, and I was constantly having people read over it and check it, where I feel like I can be more relaxed with poetry. Mm-hmm. So I think some of that is kind of getting people more interested in it, and just the age of sharing, I think probably has a lot to do with people wanting to write books. It's just another way to share that's more personal.
Yeah, I think that's one of the best parts of our generation and stuff like that, is just podcasts are becoming more popular, like just the need to share what's going on. Mm-hmm. And to find the outlet that's going to have the least amount of restrictions on what I have to say. And literally what you just said, like instead of writing in a formal blog setting, that if someone, not that that's a bad thing, but if you feel limited by punctuation or by an editor, it's like poetry, you can just fuck it. You don't have to have anything rhyme if you don't want, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's up to you. I love poetry just because it's so beautiful. Honestly, it's just you can have rhyme, or there's actual creativity, that like just the structure, and then just the words that it's a safer home for emotion.
It's not as daunting, you know, because people you can do quick little reads, and you can relate to little sections of things. Whereas if you're reading a novel or an entire article, online or otherwise, sometimes it's like, okay, even though it's only a 5-minute read, it's like, oh, it's a 5-minute read, when I could read something that takes 5 seconds to read and then relate still. Yeah. And kind of get the same weight from less words, I guess. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm a huge poetry head. I just love that kind of stuff. Who like inspires you to start?
My best friend, definitely. So at that point in time, I was doing a lot of blogging, and I had ended up writing something that got published on like online magazine.
Oh, that's cool.
Things. Wanted to write something else, and I had written it, but it was falling short of the amount of words you needed to submit. Yep. And so I was like, I don't know, I'm going to have to add to it, I guess, because it's not going to make it as an article. And she was like, well, it's not an article, it's a poem. Right. And I was like, what do you mean it's a poem? And I hadn't looked at poetry outside of things that rhymed. I mean, the only thing I had learned about poetry was probably during some high school English class that I half paid attention to. And it was probably only, a couple weeks of time within that class. So I just was very unfamiliar with the poetry world and how things could work, and how, you could write something that doesn't rhyme, or that isn't in your face obvious, that can be kind of obscure, I guess. Yeah. So when she said that, that's when she started sending me poets to look up and everything, and it really changed my world.
Do you have like a favorite poem?
I follow so many poets on Instagram, which is where I do a lot of the bulk of reading poetry, but because I've followed so many, I've started buying their books. So I'm constantly recognizing people through social media, and then gaining respect for them, buying their stuff, and like trying to let other people know about them.
What makes a good poet?
I just think people being able to relate in some form, the emotion, the picture you can kind of draw without saying so much. I think all of those things are really what get me, because it's weird how someone can say only 2 lines, and I'm like, this is my life. Right. How are you living this too? This is exactly what I'm feeling. Yeah. And you like captured the words that I couldn't say, kind of like songs do for a lot of people, like lyrics, and people are like, this is everything I have felt, and you put it into this song, and I just couldn't express those words. I feel that a lot with poetry too.
Yeah. Do you have like favorite artists that are like lyrically, like, well, first of all, I'm curious what your music taste is, just in general. But like, two, like, do you like people who you're just like, oh my gosh, if you listen to the lyrics of XYZ's, like, most of their artwork, it's like, it's really, really good.
I listen to a lot of indie, but anymore there are so many subcategories of indie, so it's really broad. I mean, a lot of things that come out anymore could be considered indie in some way, shape, or form. However, my main thing right now is Dead Man's Bones, right? Which is a band that Ryan Gosling formed. And it really is kind of like poetry put into song lyrics. It's one of those albums that you can listen to from beginning to end and really find beauty in it. And I think in this day and age with streaming, so many people listen to a song, and there's a lot of loss in the specifics of an album now, in the way that they, like, so it used to be artists would very, very particularly pick songs and pick a flow, and it was meant to be listened to from beginning to end without skipping, without listening to another song by another artist. And I think a lot of that is lost now.
Yeah.
Artists are probably still doing that, but listeners aren't listening to it the way that it's intended to be listened to.
Like, where do you think we're at with music today? Like, are you happy with the direction that we're going with, or you're like, oh my gosh, like...
I don't listen to the radio a lot, so I can't speak for...
Yeah, that makes sense.
I guess what most people are listening to.
Yeah.
I can't speak for, like, you know, new age pop. Or...
It's in the age of Spotify, where you pick when you want to listen to a song. You can listen to a song 400 times in a row if you want it. Mm-hmm. You can't do that on the radio because there's going to be ads, and then they're going to never play the same song. Like, they might do it like...
Well, you can listen to the new song 400 times in a row because that's all they play.
Exactly, right. But you don't want to be like, oh, you know what, I'm just going to listen to, you know, like some... Going from, like, Drake to Beach Boys to, like, back to Kesha for another hour. Like, you can just bounce in one... Like, in the span of, like, 12 minutes, you could listen to 400 different genres.
I would say listeners really get to choose their artists more so now than they used to. Just even thinking about not necessarily artists that I listen to, but ones that are commonly on the radio and things, that they got their start through YouTube, through social media. They were discovered in a way that wasn't happening before.
Right.
There are a lot of bands and musicians that I discover because of the time.
So I kind of want to hop back into, like, poetry as far as, like, do you use it as both, like, a fun thing, or do you use it as, like, coping mechanism, like when things are really difficult, like you draw, you write, kind of what form does it take for you?
Oh, very much coping. I went to a poetry workshop one time where I was having trouble with this one poem, and the chick that was running it was asking about the poem, and I'd said I'd been working on it for a year, and she told me it shouldn't take you a year to write a poem, harping on, you know, writers should be writing every day, that's how you perfect anything, is by practice and this and that, and forcing yourself outside of your comfort zone. I do write, and I guess I consider myself a writer to some degree, but, like, because I'm a teacher, I guess it's not, like, what I'm driven by. I don't say when I introduce myself, like, oh, I'm a writer. I say I'm a teacher first. So when I'm thinking about writing, it is all coping, and it kind of comes to me in waves when I am going through something tough, or just a tough day of dealing with whatever is going on in life. And so I find myself writing more in those moments and outputting, like, a lot of content, and I just kind of save it all up until I need it, or I save it and adjust it later, or reflect on it at a different point and see, okay, does this need messed with at all, or is it fine the way it is, and I can release it as needed, or I can release it when it hits me closer to home again, or depending on the type of day it is or the time of year it is. Like, if I'm writing something about the winter, I could save it until there's snow outside, and then, like, post it when other people might relate to it because the weather outside, or anything along those lines, basically. So definitely coping.
Yeah. When shit hits the fan, what do you do for other people that seems to help?
I definitely make it known that I am available to listen. I try to relate, but I don't try to say I get exactly what they're going through. Even if it's the same situation that I've been through before, I can say, like, I get where you're coming from, but you're going to handle it the way that you're going to handle it. And obviously it depends on the person. Sometimes I might try to go get them a gift or go get them something that I know would cheer them up. I do a lot of checking in So sending that text like, hey, I was thinking about you today, and not even forcing them to tell me what's going on, but just letting them know that they're still on my mind because they're going through that thing.
I can't tell you like how kind of just not weird, but nice it is. Like even if my mom texts me like, hey, I was thinking of you today. Just that. Mm-hmm. Nothing like, tell me what's going on. Like just, hey, I was thinking of you today. That's just like a little whoop, like a little boost.
Yeah. I feel that way when I get those too.
Yeah. What about like what works for you?
I do like to vent. For sure. I like socializing. I just like someone to be there so that they can listen. Mm-hmm. I do enjoy when someone gets something for me out of like thinking about me because of a hard time. I hate saying that one because I don't like it to come across as like selfish that I want people to buy me things. Because I always am looking at the bigger picture of it. Like they were out doing their busy life stuff and they stopped for a second to be like, what would cheer her up? I think about how much thought and time they took into that moment and getting something that would make me feel better, that's why I get so appreciative of it. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily that it's because I'm getting things. It's just that thought process behind knowing how busy people are that they took a moment to think about me.
I think it's so interesting that you felt the need to defend your self-care. There's something there that it's like, that sucks that you have to do that. Mm-hmm. Because I understand what you're getting at. That there's so much going on that you said like, oh, I could spend $5 to get and send them a coffee or whatever. Like, I get that. Mm-hmm. But then there's that voice in your head that says, oh, you're just being selfish. You just want gifts. You're just materialistic. And you're like, no, that's not what I like. You know, I'm curious like about how we get there. But like that's what makes us feel loved. It's not that we're selfish and we're materialistic, but that's for any love language. That's like, oh, well, you just need to be touched all the time, and this is it. Like, no, I want a hug, and like I like to have hugs.
Yeah, and it's something that I don't bat my eye twice about for somebody else. Mm-hmm. But then, yeah, looking at it in the reverse, no, you don't have to. Not like you don't have to buy me something. You don't have to do anything. I can take care of it myself. But it does feel so good when I have somebody thinking about me in that way or taking that little extra step because they know I'm going through a rough patch or a rough day, whatever it might be. Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's a lot easier than we make it out to be to support other people. It's just maybe we get in our own heads and we just end up not doing anything. Like we're so concerned about making sure the gift is so right, or like, for example, it'd be like kind of like, oh, do I give her a hug? Do I buy her Starbucks? Do I mow her lawn? Whereas if they just did one of those things instead of nothing, you know?
Yeah. I was even doing that this past Christmas season. I was on the phone with my mom just in a sweat about, I don't know if my gift for my brother is good enough, or I don't know if my gift's for my nephew. Like, I need to get him something else. I need to add something to it. And she was like, what you're doing is enough. They'll be appreciative of it. And, you know, that's at a time when people are typically receiving a multitude of things. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be over the top necessarily. It's just because I am so appreciative of gifts, I always want mine to be like so special for somebody else. Like, I want them to see that I really took my time to think about this because I want you to feel good. Like, I want to cheer you up, or I want you to feel loved in some way.
Yeah. My dad, he always like goes so ham for me and my family, like getting us gifts and stuff. And like, I never know what to get. Cause I mean, it's like, he's well off. It's not like I could just like buy him like, oh my God, like, you know, whereas my dad, he could just buy something like, oh my God, that's so nice. Like I can't afford that. And you just got that for me. Like I can't do that for him, right. You know? But so what I decided to do is my dad has these favorite shoes of his from like the 70s that they re-released recently, but like they don't fit him. They don't make his actual size of the shoe anymore. Oh. And so he made this little comment like, man, I wish I could just like, even if I had little baby shoes that I could display. So I bought him these little tiny baby shoe versions of his favorite shoe of all time. So now they're like just these little tiny shoes like he's going to display.
Yeah.
And so I was like, that was one of the few things I got him. But I was like, that's like, because it just meant, you know.
Yeah, those are the types of gifts that I love. Yeah. Like that thing that someone can't necessarily provide themselves with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. That there's a lot of, I don't know.
Yeah.
I love thoughtful gifts and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Zoom all the way back. Let's go. Day one, you were born. What's the family dynamic like? Let's talk about your family.
Day one, it's me and my parents.
Okay.
And then we fast forward 4 years, and I have a brother.
Mm-hmm. Are you from Indy? Did I miss that?
We did miss that. I am from Indy.
Okay.
Born and raised. Yeah, got brother number 1. And then 2 years later, my mom is expecting again. And, you know, I am hoping with all my little might for a sister. And I got brother number 2. And then that was it. There's no more hope after that. It was just us. Yeah, but I am the oldest.
Okay.
So, and they're a little bit closer in age than I am with them.
Are you like super protective of them?
I wouldn't say so. I feel like they're pretty good at fending for themselves. They never really needed my protecting. However, I did used to protect them when it came to them getting into trouble with my parents. So there would be nights like where my dad would get real angry, and I would watch this brewing between him and one of my brothers, and I would intentionally go pick a fight with my dad to take the attention off of him. And so then it would all come on to me.
Wow.
So
why are you a shield?
well, I didn't like getting in trouble myself. So I did whatever I could to stop that from happening to them, I guess. Now, when I wasn't around, who knows? They were probably still getting into trouble. But when I saw it happening, I was definitely trying to step in. And unless they were, there's probably times where I was the one that was instigating it and like, oh, they did this to me.
Yeah.
But there were definitely times that I just saw it ruin.
Mm-hmm. What's your favorite moment growing up?
So I have a big extended family, a huge extended family. My mom is the youngest of 9.
Wow.
And I have over 50 cousins. And my cousins were a lot like my, family holidays are wild.
Do you have family reunion shirts? Did you ever have those?
We don't do a lot of family reunions because none of us have ever broken off. So we all still do everything together. For big holidays. We don't still do everyone's birthday party together.
Yeah.
There were times we've done family reunion shirts in the past, but again, we're pretty much all still together. So my mom hosted Thanksgiving this year and there were 68 of us maybe. And we just do it at our home still, so it's not like we rent out something.
Oh my God, that's nuts.
Yeah, it is. It's wild and crazy, and it's fun. But my cousins were essentially my siblings as well. We were around each other all the time, and I have 2 female cousins that I was the middle of them. So one was about a year older than me, and one's about a year younger than me, and they were my interim sisters since I didn't have any, and I spent a lot of time with them, and we loved, we have a family cabin in Brown County, which is Nashville, Indiana, and we would spend a lot of time there in the summers and just go out in the woods and go fishing, and my younger cousin, Bridget, she lived right along a creek, and we would just constantly be creek stomping.
Creek stomping?
Yeah, so just hanging out in the creek, catching minnows, catching crawdads. We used to make our own face paint out of different color rocks.
Man, so you were into face painting a long time ago.
Yeah, since I can remember. Even I have a Halloween costume when I was 3, 4, and face is all painted up. So definitely been into face paint for a while. Best childhood memories are hanging out with my cousins and just my family in general.
What's been your experience with mental health growing up?
I don't recall spending a lot of time thinking about it or discussing it. And I think it was because it wasn't something that affected me personally growing up. And at that age, it wasn't as talked about as it is now. So if people around me were struggling, I wasn't as aware. Either adults or friends or otherwise. Even getting into high school, I knew people would have struggles, but it wasn't on the forefront of my mind up until I had my own life events, severe life events in my mid-20s. I didn't truly know like what it was like to have an anxiety attack, or like anxiety was something I had rarely had, which I'm very fortunate about. And it's something that as I've experienced it more in recent years, I just have such a heart for people that have been struggling with this their whole life or struggle with it all the time in much more severe ways than I've had to. Because even seeing my small moments of it, I'm just like, oh my God. And that means it's like accelerated for somebody else, like, or exaggerated for somebody else. I can't fathom that life. Yeah. So I'm very cautious about it now, but growing up wasn't completely aware. I was a little bit blindsided by it. And I just think part of that was growing up in an environment where it wasn't something that was being discussed and open.
Stigma's a bitch. Stigmas can be really hard for people, especially like culturally, when it's just, oh, we don't talk about that. Like, I mean, even not only like anxiety, but just like maybe sexuality, like in the church. We don't talk about that. Like, we don't talk about those times that dad goes out and hangs out with those other girls. Like, it just like, or we don't talk about XYZ. There's just certain things that just culture can really like hinder progress for people sometimes. I don't know.
Yeah. I think because of growing up like that, it's definitely an environment I try to change for my students. So I don't know, some would think probably like bizarrely open with my students, to a healthy degree. But I do let them know how I'm feeling on a regular basis, or I let them know about hard things that I've struggled with in my life, because I don't want them to see adults as people that don't have any problems, that it's just easy once you grow up, because that's not the case. In fact, a lot of things are harder when you grow up. But I also don't want them to think that their struggles aren't real either. So I want to create a safe space for them to have an adult that they feel comfortable coming to talk to about an issue, and that whether they're sad over their little middle school breakup or their grades or any stressors that they have in their life that they aren't expressing, because I know a lot of them aren't always expressing some of the very difficult things that they're dealing with at a very young age. I don't want them to think that that's not important, or that that you just have to sweep it under the rug until you feel better again. I don't want that environment for them. And part of helping that is by telling them when I'm having those struggles or when I've had hard times. So I've told them a lot about my personal struggles and triumphs so that they can see people are dealing with it, essentially.
That's awesome. So we were talking off screen, off camera, whatever you want to talk about. And we kind of mentioned about you being a widow. And I'm really curious if you can share any details about the situation, or I'm really curious how you've handled trauma, because that can be a very devastating thing. Death, regardless if it's really romantic or platonic, just having someone close to you die has been really, can be very difficult. So I'm really curious how you handled trauma, and just kind of, share as much as you're comfortable sharing with that.
Yeah. So I guess I will just start at the beginning. My husband and I were high school sweethearts. So we started dating when I was 16 years old, and I was a sophomore and he was a senior. It was a situation where all of my friends, they had boyfriends too, and it would get to the point where if we'd have a girls' night, they were all talking about, well, when I marry my boyfriend one day, da 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 da. And I would put my foot down and be like, when you marry your boyfriend one day, we are in high school. You're not marrying this guy. Yeah. Like, I love that you guys are together now and you're happy, but this is not marriage. This is high school relationships. So I was always very adamant about that was not going to be a thing that happened. And then flash forward down the line, and I married my high school boyfriend. So we stayed together through college, and we had a couple run-ins where we would take some time apart. There were 2 times we took some time apart from each other. We had not done anything outside of each other. Like, we hadn't seen things or experienced things or like figured out social life without each other. And it's not like we were clingy anyway, but we still just needed that time. So when we were dating, he had told me when he was 10 years old, he had Hodgkin's disease. And it was at the time he was the youngest person in the state of Indiana to have Hodgkin's.
So what is that? I've heard that, but what is that?
So Hodgkin's lymphoma, it's a type of cancer.
Okay.
He had to basically do school at home when he could, and he had to go through chemo and radiation and all of that, and then after all of that, he went into remission and had to be checked up on for like 10 years. And then he hit the 10-year mark, and right after, at 21, they found another lump, and he had cancer again. And this time it was kind of up under his jaw, and we were dating at this point in time. So it was the first time I kind of lived that experience with him. So it was my first taste of having somebody that close go through something kind of terrifying.
Yeah.
And then we got through that again, kept on going, and eventually, we got engaged and we got married, and he throughout...
How old are you at this point?
So we got engaged in 2013. I must have been 25.
Okay.
Planned our wedding. He had been not feeling great kind of throughout this wedding planning, and he was kind of being overworked, and we were planning a wedding, and everyone says how stressful that is. So we kind of chalked it up all to work and wedding planning and didn't think too much about it. Well, after the wedding, he was still kind of the same way, kind of lethargic, and but he hadn't gone to the doctor about any of it. But he also kind of had like a hang up, on doctors and hospitals, because those were traumatizing experiences for him, being sick 2 other times. So a little bit down the line, we got married in May. And then at the end of that summer is when I got my teaching job. And we were supposed to move to California, but ended up staying because I got this teaching job. A couple months in, he was just so tired all the time, couldn't do anything, and decided he needed to go to the emergency room. And it was on a day that I worked. So I said, okay, go ahead and go to the emergency room. He was going to go with his mom. I said, just text me and check up on everything, because he had really thought that he was pretty sure, like, it was something else. He was, like, very adamant, like, yeah, it's just, whatever it is. So we went in, and I kept waiting for news, and he was kind of texting me back and forth, but not really. And then I was supposed to have heard from him by lunch, but I hadn't heard from him. And he was the person that always said, no news is good news. No news is good news. So I'm sitting there talking to my coworker saying, well, I haven't heard from him, but he always says no news is good news. So it'll be fine. And then I go to my first class after lunch, and my friend that helped me get hired, he walked in and interrupted my class, and he said, hey, I need you to get your things and go to the office. And I was like, why? And he said, just get your things and go to the office. Your mom's there. I was like, why is my mom here? And I wasn't really processing it all. So I get to the office and I see my mom's face. And they bring us into the principal's office so that we're out of the main office where the secretary and kids are. And I don't know what all she said, but the only word I heard her say was cancer. And I collapsed in the middle of the office. And I said, we got to get to him. I had heard it before. He had told me before. He had been sick before, but something was different when she told me this time. So we get in the car, and we were on the northeast side, and he was at a hospital on the south side. And it felt like...
45-minute drive.
Oh, my God. It could have been 3 hours.
Yeah.
It felt that way. And I don't really remember talking that whole car ride. I don't really remember crying either at that point in time. I just remember being very frozen and just thinking, like, when will this car ride be over? I just need to get to him. And we pulled up, parked, and when I went to walk up, he and his parents were outside. He was in a wheelchair because you just have to be when you're an admitted patient. So he wanted some fresh air, I guess. And I didn't even run up and hug him. I didn't even, like, cry. I just looked at him and I was like, why are you outside? Because I was like, what? Why aren't you in a hospital room? Like, what is happening? So I said, why aren't you outside? And he was like, we can go back in. And I said, okay. So we will go down the hallway, which again could have been 3 miles long. It just felt like forever to get back to his room. And my mom and his parents let us go in by ourselves. And I remember grabbing him and being like, what is going on? And he was, just said the results came back, I have it again. And I said, okay. And at this point, I'm starting to tear up. And I said, well, you can do this. You're strong. You've done this before. And he looked at me, and this was the most heart-wrenching part for me. He looked at me and he said, I don't want to be strong. And I said, what do you mean you don't want to be strong? And he said, this is the type of thing that happens to strong people. And that really broke me. And that's the moment I knew it was going to be different. That this was definitely a battle that was going to be much different than all of his other battles, because his mindset was already different. At that point in time, I decided it didn't matter if he could be strong, because that was going to be my job. I was his partner. That's my role now. And that was kind of him handing the baton over to me. We still didn't really know much. We didn't know what treatment was going to be like or how long it was going to be. And very early on, we had told doctors and nurses, if there's a time frame, we don't want to know what it is. We would rather just kind of enjoy the time we have. But we didn't even know what the case was. So as things start to unfold, we find out the cancer had kind of taken over his liver, but it wasn't liver cancer. It was the cancer he had from the second time had metastasized, which is a fancy word for saying it moved to a different location. It had metastasized to his liver, a little bit in his bone, but their main concern was the liver. And it was called adenoid cystic carcinoma. So it was kind of like in a lymph node under his jaw originally, and it had moved. And once it metastasized, it's already harder to control anyway. It's like harder to...
If it moves?
Yeah, so once it moves, it's already a new beast at that point in time. But then it had been taking up over 80 or 90% of his liver, and it was weaving itself in and out of the liver tissue like ivy on a vine. So there wasn't such a thing as like, remove this lump or anything like that. So as doctors start figuring this out and they're telling us these things, we're in this process where we're in the hospital and we're finding out information, and then they're sending us home, and then we're back in the hospital, and then they're sending us home, and we're finding out little bits of information. And my job is to, confirm things with doctors and get second opinions and see what can be done, and just take over the whole caretaker aspect of it so that he doesn't have to worry about it. And, I'm dealing with being a host to not only my large family, but he, on both his mom and his dad's side, had huge families. So I'm dealing with visitors and hosting them and taking care of him and talking to nurses and doctors and second nurses and second doctors in other hospitals, and making sure I'm understanding the language of what these people are telling me. I need to know what metastasized means, or I need to know what medicine he's on, and I need to know when he's taking it. So my world just changed, and I stopped going to work, and I started taking care of him. He was my job. So this all was at the very end of October. By the last time we were in the hospital, the final time, the doctors came in, essentially, they said because of how the tissue was weaving, that there were no treatment options. And it was the latest stage of cancer, that it could be, they said that he had probably had it for over a year by the time we found out. And they couldn't do a transplant because we would probably lose him. They couldn't do radiation because he couldn't handle it. They couldn't do chemo because he couldn't handle it. That it was a waiting game at that point in time. But again, we had told them, don't tell us how long is left. Well, in this process, one of the doctors apparently didn't get this memo. And slipped up and told me personally that it was going to be, weeks to months left to live. I broke because I couldn't tell anybody. I couldn't tell him. He didn't want to know. The person I tell everything to, I couldn't tell.
Oh my
because
God.
He didn't want to know. And I couldn't tell our family members because we made this pact, no one's going to know.
Wow.
So I kept it to myself.
How did you do that?
I don't know. I broke down in the hallway of a hospital, but other than that, and I'm not a secret keeper. Well, I guess I can keep other people's secrets, but I can't keep my own secrets. And that was like part of my secret because, him and I, we were one. And we had been together 10 years at this point in time, so a decade. So when you were asking about, how do you measure time? I was with him for a decade.
Yeah.
They ended up sending us home on hospice, which in my mind was like, what's, because he could still walk and he was still talking. And I was like, hospice? We're sending him home on hospice because hospice means they're going to go. And, hospice is, for old people, and hospice is all these other things. Hospice is not him. But they sent us home on hospice, and I had to listen to a bunch of nurses, talk to me gently and sweetly, and they were doing their job. But, they'd look at me and be like, well, when end of life is near, and end of life this, and I was like, not in denial. I knew it was coming, but I was so focused on living in the moment that I didn't have time to think about the end of his life. I had to think about that he needs medicine in 30 minutes and that he hasn't gone to the bathroom, or that he needs help sitting up in bed, or, I didn't have time to think about what they were telling me because I was still taking care of him.
Is that where you kind of established that behavior pattern, you think, was during that time, or have you always been like that?
I've always been like that, and I think it was a tool that saved me during that time of my life.
Yeah.
So as it turns out, that last time we went home from the hospital was 2.5 weeks after the day he found out. And that doctor that slipped up had told me, weeks to months. And in the end, he ended up passing days after we got home. It wasn't even a week. And that story, too, is kind of special to me because as far as death goes, and as terrible and as awful as it is, and as much as I hate losing him, it's kind of, if I had to wish for the most beautiful way to have it, it kind of played out that way. So I never knew, when I knew that it was coming, do I want to be there? Do I not want to be there? Do I want to get a phone call? Who's going to tell me? How are they going to tell me? And it was a morbid way to think because he was still alive and I was still taking care of him, but your head takes you to these places.
You're the only one that knows, yeah.
Yeah. And so we were taking care of him around the clock. There were visitors around the clock. There was no such thing as alone time with him because he was so loved and so popular and had so many friends that any hour that was available, somebody was there seeing him. And how could I deprive somebody of that, It didn't feel like my place to kick everyone out of the room. It didn't feel like my place to kick everyone out of my own home, just so that I could spend a moment with my husband that I was in love with. So I wasn't doing that. I was letting people do the visits, and the only time I had with him is if we were asleep at night. But even then, typically his mom would stay the night or his brother would stay the night, and they weren't in our room, but they were around. One night, we had this perfect night. People came over and gave him massages, and everything was peaceful, and we dimmed all the lights and had candles going, and it was just this really nice, relaxing night. And we kind of canceled most of the visitors. I said he was having a rough time, and I was seeing rapid changes in him after he came home on hospice. One day he could walk, and the next day he couldn't, and one day he could talk, and the next day he couldn't, and one day he could eat food, and the next day he couldn't, and those types of things. And so we kind of canceled visitors outside of his mom or immediate family and had a really relaxing night, and we went to bed, and he was on oxygen at the time, and he often didn't like it, so I would catch him pulling it off because it was just, I think, annoying in his nose. And in the middle of the night, well, I had no awareness of what time it was, but to me it was the middle of the night. I wake up to him pulling it off, and I look over and I said, will you please put your oxygen back on? And he's kind of rapidly breathing and stuff, and I was like, please put it back on. And he wasn't listening to me, so I was like, maybe if he sees my face. So I turned the light on and I look at him. I was like, okay, you can have a break, but only for a second. He looked at me, and at this point, he was no longer talking or verbal or anything. But he looked at me, and he grabbed me, and he hugged me, and then he stopped breathing. So,
oh my God.
His last moment was reaching out to me in love. And when I came to this realization, I went to run and find his mom, and it was this perfect little window of time where she had already gotten up to go take her. He has a younger sister that was still in grade school, and she had gotten up to go pick her up to bring her to school. And it was the only moment that we had completely alone, like the entire time.
Wow.
So I am so appreciative of the beauty in that. And I'm like, how can I look at it negatively? Like, he had fought his whole life and then like ended with so much love and surrounded by so much love that if there was a way to go, I feel like he and I got this perfect little sliver of what some people might dream of to go. But obviously that's affected my life today and how I handle things. And I've gotten really good at helping other people through traumas. And my writing has reflected from everything I've been through. I go on blind widow dates sometimes. So there have been people that know me and know my story and say, hey, I know this person that just lost their husband, or I know this person that just lost their wife, and I don't know what to do. Will you talk to them, or will you go meet them?
Yeah.
And it's such an awkward scenario, but I'm like, yeah, of course I will, because I wish I had somebody to have done that for me.
You're like the widow whisperer.
I guess, something like that. But I have so many close friends now that have been formed through loss. It's really unbelievable, but I'm so appreciative of them. I always say to a lot of my close ones, like, I'm glad misfortune led me to you, because I don't know what I would do without these people. Like, if this is the way my life has to be, I'm so glad I get to have you in it.
Well, what's like the best thing someone can do when they experience trauma, when they experience something that's really difficult to deal with? What's the best thing they can do in trying to understand the situation? Oh my gosh, divorce, death, breakup, whatever it is, the best thing someone can do.
So going through this process, I've become hyper aware that there is no right way to grieve, and that I wasn't somebody that personally experienced like the anger side of the steps of grieving or things like that. But just because I didn't, that doesn't mean it's not okay for somebody else to have that. Like, it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to talk to people about it. I would say allow yourself to feel whatever you're feeling. And then, within your power, do what it takes to find your comfort zone, or like your thing that helps. So with me, mine did turn into be a lot of reading and writing, and that was self-soothing for me. But I've known other people where exercise has been helpful. If you need to go to counseling or therapy, I'm very, very pro those things. If you need to find just a group in general, if you need to travel more or find space. And I know sometimes it's easier said than done, because I'm somebody that doesn't have children. So there were a lot of avenues that I could do that somebody that with children might not be able to do. But usually, hopefully, there's someone in your life willing to help. And a lot of times people ask what they can do to help, and you don't have an answer, but maybe like that thing could be, I need you to get my kids out of the house for a night so that I can just sit in a tub for 3 hours, or binge watch TV, or just sit on a couch and stare, because that's what I need. It's crazy. Grief kind of steers you in very bizarre ways that I mean, you just have no control over. And so if you find something that helps and you are capable of using any help at all from like the people that surround you, I would say take advantage of it, even though that can be hard too. It can be hard to say like, yeah, I need help, or I need to get through this, but finding your thing that can help you get through it, I guess.
I think you hit the nail on the head right there. Just, there's so much judgment, and I'm not grieving in the right way. You know, it's just like some people are going to be angry right off the bat. Some you're not going to be angry until 2 years later. You don't know. You could never be angry. You could just be confused. I mean, there's just no way. And just trying to handle it as it comes, you know, and love yourself as often as you can.
You know, a lot of people think once so much time has passed that somebody should be through their grief, or a lot of people that have been in my scenario, you know, they get really upset because people have asked them, like, aren't you over it yet? And I've had people ask me, like, aren't you over it yet? And it's like the most wrong thing you could say, because when you lose your whole world, there's no such thing as getting over it.
Yeah.
A lot of widows and widowers use the term like moving forward instead of like moving on or getting over it into a new aspect of their life. To think that someone could just get over this huge aspect. I mean, and even not just with a significant other, you know, a child loss, a parent loss, your best friend possibly, or, you know, some people have really close relationships with grandparents, whoever it is, but that significant loss, there's something different about it, and it's definitely going to change everything you do in life, and it's going to weigh on every aspect of your life, that it changes who you are to some degree. I mean, I definitely think it changes has changed who I am.
What makes you happy?
Love makes me happy, in all aspects, platonic or otherwise. Anything I love, I'm passionate about. I love loving, like I love showing love to people. I love people showing me love.
Well, we have arrived to the notorious Final Five. Number 1, what is your spirit animal?
I'm gonna go with a bat.
You sleep upside down, that's why.
Yeah, that's it. You know, got it. No, they love being in tight little spaces with like all their little buddies.
Yeah.
And I mean, they will squeeze into the tiny littlest homes with like hundreds of them all cuddled up, and that's kind of my dream. I'm also a night person. Love to be awake at night.
And you're blind.
And I'm blind. Well, I do wear contacts.
Okay, same.
So that's fitting.
There you go. Name one of your most proud moments of your life.
Very recently, I had a former student who is now in college nominate me as the most influential teacher in her life.
Aww.
And it was not like this big award ceremony or any, like a banquet. It's, she is one of the girls that helps out with the wrestling team, and their coaches have everyone on the team, including the girls that help out do this, nominate a teacher. And it was really special and cool. I think every coach ever should make their team do this. Almost all of them, not all of them, but most of them named their high school teacher that they've had since, you know, freshman year through senior year, depending on how old they were. And I thought it was incredible that she chose someone that wasn't a high school teacher, and I was never even, you know, a homeroom teacher to her. I was just her art teacher, you know?
Yeah.
But it was really special for me. And it wasn't this glamorous thing, but to me it meant the world.
Embarrassing story.
Okay, in Nashville, Tennessee, my friends and I were on Broadway, and we did talk about music, but we did not talk about my dislike for country music. So, I don't love country music. However, live music trumps all for me. So, even if I'm listening to country, if it's live, I'm good. And if you've never been to Nashville, Broadway is all live music, and every single bar on the whole strip you walk into, there's always live music, you know, day or night. And there was this singer, and he was taking a break to walk around and ask for tips, which is very cultural there. All the bands go have like tip buckets, and that's how they make a lot of their money while playing at all these little bars. And typically if somebody is doing this, one of the band members, then the rest of the band is still just playing music in the background. Mm-hmm. Well, he had stopped and was talking at the bar, and my friend had brought him over, and he was talking to us and had his microphone still, and he was like, why don't you say something in it? And I was like, no. I was like, I hate country. And he was like, well, the microphone's not on. And I was like, no, yes it is. I'm not talking into this thing. Like, I'm not an idiot. And so then I take it and I start tapping on it. And I couldn't hear it through the speakers. Oh, no. And so I'm tapping and tapping, and I'm like, wait, I don't think it really is on. And so I get that microphone right up to my mouth, and I was like, I bleep hate country. And it echoes through the building. Oh, no. And it was so mortifying. And he's cracking up, and my friend recorded the whole thing and is cracking up, and I just took off running into a corner. I couldn't believe I had done it. And, you know, I'm in a place where everyone is obsessed with country, and it was mortifying. That's my most embarrassing moment.
I hate country as well. I just wouldn't yell it into a microphone in the haven of country. I know. I don't know. It was a poor judgment choice right then. What is the conspiracy theory that you believe in?
I'm a ghost person. Okay. Yeah. I would believe in ghosts.
Ooh. Have you ever been to like a haunted house before? I mean, not the one you pay like locally, but you know.
Not by choice. Like, I can't think of something.
By choice? Did you get kidnapped into a ghost house?
No, but you know, sometimes you could just be like in a historic building that all of a sudden they're like, by the way, it's haunted. Okay. Which I don't even necessarily remember a moment like that. But no, I've never, because I am so adamant about believing these things. Yeah. And I am the biggest chicken. I have never walked into a situation or a scenario where I'm going to be like in a haunted house. That is not my thrill.
Why would you pay money for that? Yeah.
I hate being scared. So that's not my cup of tea.
I was watching Paranormal Activity, and like I jumped in, like there was this one like at the very end of one of the shows or movies, and like I levitated out of my seat. Like I was so scared that I jumped, and I'm probably like 3-4 feet in the air. I threw my phone, and my phone just slammed against the ceiling, so another 5 feet. And I was like, and they're like, dude, what? Like, everyone's laughing. I mean, no one's scared. I was like, I'm sorry, I didn't. But, like, I was, like, levitating.
Yeah. I've convinced my students that my classroom is haunted because of how many creepy things happen in it, which has been fun for them because they also have learned that I get scared easily. So there's this closet on the other side of my classroom. And there's this little cutout hole that actually would lead you into my room, but it's way up in the shelves. And normally I'm not paying attention to it. And one day I was in there having lunch with a bunch of the girls, and a shoebox just like flies out from flies out from the shelves. And I was like, what is happening? And everyone is so scared. And then I was like, guys, like, it did not just fall. It, like, flew out. Yeah. And they were like, we know, your room is so haunted. And then I look up and I see something else, like, fidgeting up there. And I was like, I don't know about this. And I went and I opened the door, and there were these 8th grade boys next in there. And I was like, you guys, you got me good that time.
What is your favorite part of yourself?
Empathy. The fact that I am able to feel that, because I know it does not come easily for everyone or naturally to everybody. So I think, the whole big heart thing and being able to put myself in somebody else's shoes.
I would agree with that. Yeah, so the last part here is you're going to pick a person, your 8th grade science teacher, your significant other, your best friend, family, whoever you want. Mm-hmm. And you're going to shout them out, hey, Janice, thanks so much because you're blah, 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 blah. You inspire me to do this, or whatever you want to say. But you're picking one person and you're going to encourage them and just like, hey, thanks so much you're such a light in my life, whatever. But take as much time as you want to shout out whoever you want.
All right. Well, I am going to go with my best friend. I call her by her last name, so I'm just going to refer to her as that. So, Chumley, I want to thank you really for everything in my life. Thank you for being a light that always knows how to handle my moods, whether it be stress or grief. Thank you for being a rock that I can always turn to. Thank you for putting up with my overwhelming desire to be social at all times and talk constantly, even though you are very much the opposite. But I appreciate how often you listen to me and just absorb and kind of be a soundboard for everything I have to say for me to process my own thoughts and feelings. Thank you for being there, late nights, early mornings, and really being a soulmate, one of my soulmates. I really don't know how I could get through most things in life without you. I don't know how I could get through any day without you. My love for you is endless.
Yay. Thank you so much for being on here.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me.
It means a lot. I was super pumped to kind of have you on here, and I feel like I have a good vibe radar on people, and so I get pumped when I see people. I'm like, oh yeah, this is gonna be a good one. So I definitely felt that with this conversation, and I can't wait to see where you go, in 2020 and in 2030 and this next decade. I'm so excited just for you to continue to inspire others that are in your life, and just the kids that you interact with on a day-to-day basis. I think they're really lucky to have you as an art teacher. So, well, thanks for the cookies, and we'll see you next time, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Hey everybody, this is Ryan from the Classic Buffalo Podcast. Wanted to take a second to talk about Anchor, how I'm actually making this podcast happen. Super happy that I'm partnering with them. So, Anchor is actually the easiest way to make a podcast. I've done my research. This is basically the best way. I promise. It's going to give you everything you need in one place for free, which is the best part. It's going to have tools, so you don't really need a fancy schmancy recording guy. Anchor's going to be helping you out there, and then they're going to distribute the podcast everywhere to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, everything. And then you can also make money with basically no minimum listenership, which is kind of rare. So hop on Anchor as soon as you can. Thanks. So I just got done talking with the wonderful Emily, aka Hivvy. Thanks so much for being vulnerable on the podcast today, sharing your awesome story. What a warrior, a young warrior, just absolutely killing it, being an inspiration to so many people, and just being an awesome teacher. You can tell that even just from this little podcast we did. Just wanted to cover a couple of things, ask you guys, the listeners, a few questions. Sometimes maybe turn this into a little mini workshop, but my question to you guys, what is the thing that you're not grieving? What is the situation that's been really difficult, whether it's through the past or just some reality of situation, are you not diving into it and properly grieving? And it could be super deep, you're not dealing with the fact that you are broken up with some relationship that you've been a part of you for 7 or 8 years, or you lost a family member, or all of a sudden you get in a car crash, you're paralyzed, something as radical as that, or just you didn't get that job you really wanted to have. Something, pain is pain. And my question to you is, what is that situation? What is that thing that you're not grieving? The reality, and what is holding you back from making progress and to being happy, And I thought it was just a little tiny thing that she said and mentioned was that, you never really get over it. It's not, I don't know if grief is necessarily about completely forgetting what's happened to you. It's just about chapters, and it's about continuing on. And I thought she did a really good job of just explaining that the goal of therapy isn't to completely like ignore and like just forget bad things that have happened to you, but it's just about dealing with it. And because for whatever reason, let's say some situation happened to you a long time ago, and then a week from now, it could be really difficult. You just never know when trauma is going to reactivate itself. You just don't know. And you have to take it as you can, and you just have to do your best, right? Ultimately, I think the goal should be to deal with a core so that way you're basically only dealing with shock waves of tiny little, rough days and not giant bouts of depression, right? Like that'd be the goal, to kind of tackle the core issue as much as you can. But no one's going to hate you for being sad because it's, the first birthday without your dad, like no one's going to hate you on that. You're allowed to be sad about XYZ. First of all, give you permission to be sad about something if you want to be sad or angry. Giving yourself space to grieve and to go through the process with any situation. Like, just be aware of that, try not to judge yourself. And if you're judging yourself for judging yourself, stop it. Just try and be a little bit easier on yourself today and going forward. I hope you career people out there, sometimes opportunities and careers kind of come and smack you in the face, whether that's the universe or God or whatever you want to call it. Sometimes you just stumble into something that could actually be really cool, and maybe that'll happen to me, or maybe that'll happen to you. Who knows? But you kind of take life as it comes. You can't really predict that what's its face is gonna die, or you're not gonna get that job, or you're gonna get a giant speeding ticket, or your basement's gonna flood. There's just random stuff that can happen that you just don't know. And all you can do is put your best foot out there, and then when things happen, try and take it easy on yourself. As Gracie once said on one of the first episodes, was to pick up the feather and put down the weight. Oh, gosh, I probably butchered that, but you get what I'm saying. Just because you're a face painter at the zoo doesn't mean you can't be a teacher, and vice versa. You just never know. Take it as it happens. Try and be open, do your best, and if there is that one thing you really want to do, who's to say you can't do it? Who's to say your opportunity isn't right around the corner? They always say that it's always darkest before dawn, right? Like there's always that, just like it's getting worse, and then it's like that's a good sign if things are getting worse, because it's going to get better eventually. You're farther along on the progress bar, but or that success is coming. What if success is right around the corner? What if instead of it's far away, what if it's right around the corner? You don't know. A little other tidbit thing I wanted to share. I can't remember where I heard it. Might have been on here with another podcast I heard, interviewing another guest that's in a future episode or something, but I heard it and I wanted to reiterate to you because, I don't know, for whatever reason, I just wanted to share it with you guys, but here it is. There are people in your life that you can't imagine your life without, There are people that boyfriends, girlfriends, parents, best friends, and let's say you met them. This is a good example. I'll use this for an example for this. Is basically, I met Erica, which is one of my best friends. I met her in 2012. So before 2012, we were living 18, what was it? Yeah, 18, 19, something like that, years. We were just living our lives. Like, having experiences, joking around with our other friends and stuff. Like, we were going through life before certain people or certain circumstances or certain jobs or just life situations happening. Before you met certain people or before other things happen. But if you project that into the future, there could be people, there could be situations, there could be jobs that like a couple of years from now, you're like, oh yeah, this has always been a part of my life. You just never know when that thing is going to happen, and try and turn that into a positive however you will. But I thought that was kind of cool that there could be some new people that are coming into your life soon. They're going to be a big part of it. You just never know. But all I know is I had fun once again talking with another one of you awesome people. If you would like to be on the podcast, share your experience with mental health, grief, depression, anxiety. If you want to talk about sports, shoes, traveling, blogging, ducks, whatever you want. It doesn't matter. I'll love to talk with you. So reach out to me on Instagram, or if you know somebody who'd want to be on, let me know. So it's at Classic Buffalo. That's how you can find me, Ryan. If you're in Indy, we can meet up, or if you're outside of Indy or can't come there, we can always do a recorded phone call. So stay safe. I love you. You guys are always awesome. It's always kind of cool to see how many people are listening, and even if it's just one of you guys, it means the world. So changing lives one person at a time. But until next time, we'll have another episode on Thursday. So stay alive till then. You got this. I believe in you. Even if you don't believe in yourself. Not yet. That's okay. I believe in you. I'm going to go now. But have a good rest of your day and rest of your week. And I'll see you on Thursday. Bye.